My name is Elsmin. 3 months ago, I thought I'd struck gold. A job building a luxury apartment complex on the outskirts of Beijing. The pay was insane 3 times what anyone else was offering. But there was a catch. A big one. I had to stay on-site 24/7. Completely cut off. No phones, no internet, no family visits. I didn't even hesitate. With that kind of money on the table, I signed the contract right away. But as soon as my boots hit the dirt, I knew something was off. The site manager, this middle-aged guy with an expression carved from ice, gave us our first task. It wasn't about laying rebar or pouring concrete. We were to dig a giant hole, dead center on the property. Call it Tu Ell Foundation. He said it was critical, that it would anchor the building's very strength. His voice was flat, leaving no room for argument. But his eyes, there was something in his eyes that made my stomach clench. A flicker of something I couldn't place, but it felt wrong. We started digging. The work was hard, but it was the silence that was unnerving. Days later, my shovel hit something hard. Not a rock. It had a hollow ring to it. I carefully dug around it and pulled out an old ceramic jar, cracked and covered in dirt. Peeking inside, I saw a handful of animal bones and some faded red symbols painted on the clay, characters I'd never seen before. Suddenly, the manager was right there, as if he'd been summoned. He snatched the jar from my hands, and I saw his fingers tremble just a little. For a split second, his mask slipped, and I saw a flash of raw fear mixed with anger. He mumbled something about rituals, about asking permission, and insisted the jar had to go back in the ground before we could continue. He just nodded, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. That very night, a shaman arrived. He was draped in a long, black robe, his face completely hidden by a deep hood. He didn't carry any tools, just the sound of his own chanting. We were gathered around a small fire, and as he began his ritual, the flames leaped and twisted, throwing these grotesque, dancing shadows onto the half-finished concrete walls. Watching him move, it felt like the shadows themselves were alive, writhing in some silent agony. The air grew thick with the smell of smoke, damp earth, and something else, something metallic and sharp that I couldn't identify. I tried to look away, to focus on anything else, but my eyes kept getting dragged back to him, held there by some invisible force. After that night, the entire construction site felt different. It felt alive. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, to cling to the corners with a new kind of darkness. I'd close a door at night, only to find it slightly ajar in the morning. And then the whispers started, faint, impossible to understand, like they were happening just on the edge of my hearing. It was as if the building itself was starting to breathe. Some nights, I'd swear I could see figures standing just beyond the ring of our work light spell, still shapes that would vanish the moment I blinked. Then I overheard something that turned my blood to ice. One evening, I was heading to get some water and passed by the temporary office. The manager and the shaman were inside, their voices low and urgent. "We need the right presence," the shaman said. The manager replied, "Someone whose spirit will guard the foundation, whose essence will keep it strong." The words didn't make any sense. Not really. But a primal kind of dread washed over me. My gut was screaming that this was about something far darker than I could ever imagine. It felt like something ancient and unseen was demanding a price. A few days later, a young worker named Tu Ell, one of the most cheerful guys on the crew, just disappeared. The manager told us he'd quit, walked off the job without a word. But that didn't make sense. His boots, his wallet, even a worn photo of his girlfriend was all still in his little shack. The unease that had been simmering inside me for weeks finally boiled over. This wasn't a normal construction project. Something terrible was happening here. That night, I started hearing footsteps outside my shack. They were light, but hurried and deliberate. I pressed my eye to a crack in the wooden wall and watched. 3 figures were moving through the dark, dragging a large, heavy object toward the hole in the center of the site. I couldn't make out what it was, but it was wrapped in burlap, and it moved. Just a little, a slight, unnatural shift, as if it were aware of the moonlight hitting it. My pulse was a jackhammer in my ears. I wanted to run, to scream, but I was frozen, trapped between terror and a desperate need to know. The figures reached the edge of the hall. The shaman began to chant again, a low, rhythmic drone that vibrated through the ground and right up into my bones. The manager whispered words I couldn't make out, but the air around them seemed to shimmer, growing thick and heavy. I felt this incredible pressure, an invisible weight pressing down on me, as if the night itself was holding its breath. I watched them for hours. I didn't understand the ritual, but the energy in the air was undeniable. They lowered the object into the foundation, slowly, reverently. The shaman circled the hole, sprinkling some kind of powder and murmuring non-stop. The manager's face, lit by the fire, was ghostly pale, his expression disturbingly serene. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The figures walked away, melting back into the darkness. They left the hole silent and still, but the ground itself felt different, heavier, alive. After that night, the atmosphere on the site was suffocating. The shadows weren't just following me anymore. They lingered, pressing in, curling around corners and crawling up the walls. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced that a presence was standing right beside my bed, just out of sight. Sometimes I could hear it, faint breathing, slow and deep, as if something massive was sleeping just beneath the surface of the earth. I tried to sleep during the day, but it was no use. Even in the bright sunlight, the foundation loomed over me. I could feel its weight in my chest, its slow, steady pulse under my feet. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye, and the feeling of being watched was constant, a prickling on the back of my neck from a presence that felt older than the building, older than the city itself. Days bled into a week. Tu Ell never came back. The other workers started whispering among themselves tools, moving on their own. Sudden cold spots in the middle of a warm day, lights flickering for no reason. I had to get out, but the main gates were locked, and guards patrolled the perimeter constantly. I wasn't trapped by chains. I was caged by fear. Finally, I saw my chance. A convoy of supply trucks was leaving, and in the chaos, I managed to slip out, hiding in the back of one until we were miles away. I went straight to the police. I told them everything, but by the time they investigated, the building was already 5 stories high. The manager and the shaman were gone. They dug where I told them to, but found nothing but solid, undisturbed concrete. The officers were polite, but they suggested I was just exhausted, that the stress and long hours had made me imagine things. That was months ago. Now, every time I pass that towering, gleaming apartment complex, I feel it. The whispers on the wind, the faint, rhythmic breathing from deep beneath the foundation, the unshakable sense of being watched by something that will never, ever rest. The new residents call it a luxury home. I know it's a tomb. Some nights, I dream of shadows rising from the earth, of walls that pulsed with a heartbeat that isn't human. I don't know for sure what happened to Tu Ell, or what that object they buried in the hole really was. But I know this. Buildings built on secrets carry a weight that has nothing to do with stone and steel. They are anchored by something older and darker than any architect could ever design. And somewhere, right now, on another dusty construction site, the ritual is probably happening again. It doesn't need blood or fire. Not always. It just needs human greed and superstition. Those things never really go away. They just lie in wait. I'll carry this feeling with me for the rest of my life. The sensation of shadows moving just out of sight. The whisper of something buried deep beneath the ground. And I pray you never have to experience it, because some things buried beneath the earth should never, ever be disturbed. Thank you for listening to my story. If it sent a chill down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there.